We're having this conversation in a moment in our country which is, we're very sad about what happened in Orlando. We're hearing about walls being built, about what just happened in Great Britain. But we're also having this conversation in the midst of a story that actually has not hit major front page national news. The story of what's happening in Oakland, California in the police department. How many of you know what's happening in Oakland, California? Okay, so not a lot. I'm not an expert. I actually don't, because I'm not an expert. I don't know if any of you want to bring us up to date or could briefly bring us up to date. But the fact that Oakland is happening, 3 police chiefs resigning, the continual rape of a Latina young woman, and people knowing about this. Can you give us some context, Sherilyn?
Well, so there's that. So the worst part is that we learned about this not in the context of a prosecution. We learned about this in the context of a resignation, right? Which is a very different kind of way to think about this issue. What we learned is that a whole set of police officers in the Oakland Police Department were involved with a first underage, and then later on, she was 18 years old, young woman, who, when it was described to us as pursuant to this resignation, she was described as an underage sex worker, which I think is actually an oxymoron. She's a child. And several police officers were involved in this conduct with her. They were involved in sharing information about police stings. One officer ended up committing suicide. I mean, all of this, it just keeps blossoming and blossoming and blossoming. And the result was that 3 different police chiefs resigned in the same week as a result of these revelations and others that have come collateral to it. The San Francisco Police Department has been under investigation for a number of police killings, but also has been riven with racist emails that have been revealed between members of the police force. So we're not talking about Alabama. Right. We're talking about, so that San Francisco, there's Ferguson, there's Baltimore, there's New York, there's North Charleston. We have a nationwide problem. And that's part of why we've been talking about the cultural dimensions, because it is a closed culture for the most part. And what can develop in a closed culture is extreme dysfunction. And when you marry dysfunction with impunity, the impunity that has been given by the Supreme Court, by prosecutors who pass this conduct, who know about this conduct but don't do anything about it, and you combine it with the issue of racial bias, and then you combine it with something we do have control over, to speak to this gentleman's question right here, we decide what conduct is criminal, by the way. So just, we are in this country over the last few years deciding that we're going to treat marijuana differently than we treated it in the past. How many young people have been caught up in the criminal justice system? How many police resources have been used to engage people around the sale and use and possession of marijuana? We can decide from one day to the next that we don't want to do that anymore. So we're really looking at this moment in which there are multiple levels of our criminal justice system that we have to engage. I worry that people will think that the problem is too big and so we can't solve it. And so I want to say to you is, we got ourselves into this. It wasn't too big when we decided to pass these laws about marijuana, when we decided to let this conduct go with impunity, when you all probably paid no attention to the Supreme Court decision that said, hey, if you're arrested, you can be strip searched. Hey, if you're arrested, you can have your cheek swabbed and they can take your DNA. Everybody in this room probably knew about the FBI, going into your Apple phone and thought that's a terrible invasion of privacy. But what about the fact that you can be arrested and they swab your cheek? This is just arrested, you're not convicted, and take your DNA. What's more private? So these are the things that we allow. And we do have the ability to intercede and to wake up to these multiple levels where we're really responsible for creating the structure. Right.